Good evening. Thank you for joining us for Congressman Tim Burchett's telephone town hall from Washington, D.C. Congressman Burchett is here, and Congressman, if you don't mind, maybe offer some opening remarks.
Well, thank you for having me, folks, and thank y'all for tuning in for tonight's live telephone town hall event. Tonight's discussion will focus on some current events, some bills I've introduced, and actually some recent votes we've taken in the House of Representatives. If you'd like to ask a question, please press 0 at any time. Press 0 if you'd like to ask a question. But before we begin, if it's all right with y'all, I'd like to mention some stuff that I'm currently working on here in Washington. I'm expecting some votes to be called shortly, but I will take as many calls as I can before heading to the House floor. While we're waiting for more folks to join the call, why don't we talk about some of the biggest issues that are facing our country. First one, of course, is inflation. The latest data shows prices rose 7.9% compared to 1 year ago. That's the highest inflation rate since January 1982. High prices they're a tax on every hard-working American and their families. If we don't get this figured out, I think our economy is really headed to a very dark place. And Congress can make the economy healthier by spending less, which is something we've never been able to do. Just a few weeks ago, I voted against a bloated $1.5 trillion spending package that was thousands of pages long, negotiated behind closed doors, and we only had just a few hours to read it. And actually, the final portion of it was changed to where it was we just had a very short window of opportunity to even read the thing. So, folks, you all know that's not the way we do business, not the way we should do it up here. I won't support reckless spending of your tax dollars like that. What I think we need are some policies that reduce pressure on supply chains and lower costs for business. I think that's something we learned during COVID. And another issue that seems to be hot right now, and this is a good transition to move into that, is the Russia-Ukraine situation. I'll say a few words about that. Of course, everybody's alarmed about the war in Ukraine, and I've been praying for all those folks over there who are suffering. Everybody's seen the television reports, and it really is horrible. In response, though, our country's imposed a series of economic sanctions on Russia. In my opinion, the Biden administration made a series of foreign policy blunders that really emboldened Putin and actually made him stronger, like the withdrawal from Afghanistan. A consequence from this war is our country is no longer importing oil from Russia. Vladimir Putin is a thug. He's just like a mobster, but he's a multi-billionaire, I guess. We needed to do this to stop the funding of the war machine in Russia. Even though energy prices were already going up before the war, this Russia oil ban is not going to lower our energy prices. High energy prices for businesses are passed down to the consumers, which does not help with inflation. Before the war started, though, we were getting about 7% of our oil from Russia, and we've got to make up for the lost supply. When the Biden administration took office, they immediately attacked the fossil fuel industry to appease the far left. If you remember during the debates, then Vice President Biden, now President Biden, was running to the left of Bernie when he said that we're basically going to shut down the oil industry, and that's what he did. And of course, President could reduce our energy prices by turning our country to energy independence and increasing domestic oil and gas production. But that's not what they're planning on doing, and that's not what they're currently doing. And not everyone can afford green energy technology like an electric car or a solar panel on their house. I believe new electric vehicles start out about $50,000, and working folks in East Tennessee, that's a pretty big chunk to pay. Maybe not for some fat cat in Washington, but it's a lot for our folks to pay. Of course, President Biden, he needs to ignore the politics of his far left base. He needs to wake up to the reality of the energy situation in our country and focus on lowering the cost of some of our affordable energy sources that we've relied upon as Americans. It looks like we've got a pretty decent amount of folks that have already called in, so why don't I stop talking and start bringing some folks on to ask me some questions. Remember, though, folks, if you want to ask a question, press 0 anytime, and we'll try to get to everybody's question if we can.
Absolutely, Congressman. We'll try to get to everybody's question. And as the Congressman said, if you have a question, please press 0. You'll be dropped into a queue where you can record your question before being brought on live for the Congressman. Congressman, we had a call. She didn't want to come on live, but her name's Sarah out of Tazewell up in Claiborne County, and she wanted to know, what are your thoughts about President Biden's budget that was released today?
Well, I can tell you right now, it's pretty bloated. $5.8 trillion. It's astronomical. The analysts, of course, have already estimated the budget would increase the debt to 106.7% of the U.S. GDP by 2032. And we spend over $5 trillion. It's not much of a budget, if you ask me. Knowing Congress, we will miss the budget deadline and be late again on funding the government for next year. And of course, I just voted against a $1.5 trillion government spending bill a few weeks ago. This government funding bill, probably the one for 2022, it was 5 months late, and there's the pork that was included in it was $2.3 billion. Some of the pork, not all of it. You probably will never figure out all of it because, as I used to say, it takes a Philadelphia lawyer to figure out what they got in this thing. But $2.3 billion for Amtrak, which has zero effect on the second congressional district, but we're paying into it. $75 million for electric vehicle grants. You know, the fellow that owns Tesla, the company,
Elon Musk.
Yeah, Elon Musk. I was sitting there reading something about it just before I walked in. He they subsidize those vehicles about 25% at one time, and he's asked for the subsidies to come off of electric vehicles because he says he's ready to compete. But Washington will not take his subsidy off. I mean, he's asking to not be funded, and they're still doing it. Of course, the budget 2022 was negotiated behind closed doors in the dead of night, and it was thousands of pages long, and they revised it, several times in one day, so you never really knew what version you were voting on. And I don't follow Speaker Pelosi's pass it, find out what's in it theory, and that's no way to handle y'all's tax dollars, folks. We used to say we're spending our kids and grandkids. Now we're spending our great-grandkids' money, and it needs to stop. So thank you so much.
And just a reminder, we've got a lot of folks on from all over East Tennessee. Press 0 if you'd like to ask a question of Congressman Tim Burchett. Congressman, we're going to go to a gentleman out of Campbell County, Denny. Denny?
Hey, Denny, what's up?
Yes, Congressman, I have the utmost respect for you.
Hey, Danny, call me Tim, okay?
Okay, Tim.
All right, brother.
I respect you as a congressman, and I'll tell you what, we've got some evil people in the White House, and they're doing all they can. I'm talking about Pelosi, Camellia, and Biden. They are evil people. They will do anything against our great nation to bring it down.
Well, they have done a pretty good job of bringing it down so far. The out-of-control spending is what I've been concentrating on, but a lot of the things they've been doing, just weakening us overseas. You know, I had an amendment that reminds me of during the Transportation Committee, and it said that these airlines, that if we're going to bail them out, that we don't pay their executives big money, and we don't allow any of the money to go to them. It needs to go to the working people, the mechanics, the flight attendants, and all those people, all those other people that were going to be out of work during the pandemic. And you know, they blocked that. They wouldn't allow it. It went a straight party vote, and there is nothing that just tells you that they're not what they appear to be. And I worry for our country, brother. I really do, Denny. And thank you so much for calling. Okay, hold on for a second, folks.
There we go. All right, Denny, thanks a lot. Congressman, we've got Karen, and she would like to know a little bit about southern border issues. She's got a question about that. Karen?
Yes, hello, Tim. I have a big concern about our southern border, and what I heard today through a report from one of the reporters that's on the border is that if Title 40, I think it's 42, is lifted, then we're looking at potentially 2.5 million people coming, an additional 2.5 million coming through our southern border. What's Congress going to do? What can you do? What can we do?
That's a great question. You're correct. Your numbers, we've already had over 2 million. And if you remembered, we said that there was people on the terrorist watch list, and the Biden White House said that is not accurate. And then it was revealed that it was accurate, and of course they haven't responded to that. But and everything that it brings with it, the human trafficking. I have a bill dealing with fentanyl. It's just a horrible, horrible drug, and they're lacing everything with it, from marijuana to heroin, everything that people get out on the street, pills. They're pressing it into pills. I talked to and my bill that basically says if you're going to traffic this in, you get a life sentence because they are actually killing people with this stuff. And you can put what you can fit on a dime could kill 1,000 people. So it's a multifaceted problem, and there's nothing we can do because this administration has blocked every attempt. As a matter of fact, they've encouraged people to come in, where they're bringing these people in over the border. You've seen the stories. They're putting them on the airplanes, and they brought them to East Tennessee. And if somebody wants to come here legally and work, I don't have a problem with that. It's just these people are being exploited by the drug cartels, and we're in a bad state of, it is very bad, ma'am. Until this next election rolls around and we can do something about it, I don't think we're going to be able to do anything. We had over 11,000 pounds of fentanyl confiscated. I think those were old numbers. And so we've just, Kamala Harris is supposed to be overseeing it. I don't think she could find the border of Washington, D.C., much less our southern border. I'm very disappointed in that, and I can't candy coat that, ma'am. It's a horrible situation.
All right, Karen, thank you very much. Just a reminder, everyone, if you've got a question for Congressman Tim Burchett, please go ahead and press 0 on your phones. You'll be dropped into a queue where you can record your question before coming on live with Congressman Burchett. Let's see, Congressman, I believe we've got a question here dealing with what's going on in Ukraine right now. I've lost right here it is, from Don. We're going to add Don from Tazewell, another call from Tazewell asking about energy. Don? Don, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay, there you go, Don.
Hey, Don, it's Tim. What can I do for you, brother?
I'd like to know why we can't tap into our own oil reserves here, and I know it's not the great effect the President wants, but it will at least get us through this crisis for a while.
Yes, sir. I agree with you. We were exporting energy before he came into office, and now we're an import. So, we were importing over 670,000 barrels of oil a day in 2021. And oddly enough, the Keystone Pipeline that Biden canceled would have brought us about over 1 million barrels a day. So you can do the math on that. And today, a cost of a barrel of oil is $106. And in 2020, I believe at one point it was down to $17 a barrel. So there is no reason in the world why we don't start pumping our own oil. Now the president's press secretary will tell you that we permitted all these oil wells. Well, the problem is that we haven't permitted the pipelines to carry it. So, we've got it's like you're drinking a big gulp and you've got you want a big straw, but all they give you is one of those little cocktail coffee stirring straws to drink the thing. So yeah, you could probably drink it. It'll just take you a lot longer. And that's sort of the case we're in right now. We've got to permit these pipelines. There are dozens that are literally, no pun intended, they are in the pipeline that the Biden administration will not permit. And they're going to tell you there's oil wells already permitted. They're not drilling in, but that's the only reason is there's no way to haul it. You can't haul it by truck. That trucking industry is at the fullest. And so we're really limited right now. And it's, I think it's all by design. I think it's more push. So we'll push these Biden woke agenda stuff where gasoline's at $7 a gallon, and everybody's going to want an electric vehicle, and then that's where, of course, I just saw last week where Speaker Pelosi had invested, her husband had invested heavily in an electric car company, millions of dollars. I guess that's the writing's on the wall for that, but I sure would like to keep our energy independence and just get it here. And the other thing is the green. Everybody's talking about the green issue of it all. You know, how we're reducing our oil consumption. And the reality is it's increasing. And since we're purchasing it from Russia, which is some of the most harmful energy supplies in the world, whereas it pollutes our environment even more. So there's no rhyme or reason to what they're doing other than they're just pushing their agenda and causing a lot of pain in this country, which seems what this White House is very adept at doing. So thank you, brother. Thank you. Sorry I gave it a long answer, but there's a lot in there.
Thanks a lot for that question, Congressman. We're going to go to Helen next. Folks, reminder that pressing 0 on your phone will give you an opportunity to ask a question of Congressman Tim Burchett. Congressman, you're on with Helen. Helen?
Hey, Helen.
Hey, Tim. It's Helen Lacey from Knoxville.
Yes, ma'am.
The question the lady asked about people coming over the border and the drugs, it kind of ties in with that about how it is so hard to find help for drug abusers when they have no insurance, and also the mental health. I know there's some family members that need mental health because the parents have put their children through so much with their drug use. So those children need mental health that they're having a hard time finding someone to help them with mental health.
Yes, ma'am. That's a kind of a multifaceted question. I'll address the drug situation. I have many close friends that have been in rehab. I've helped them get in rehab, and I know you're right. People without insurance have a real hard time getting into rehab, and it's just an ongoing problem, and we've got to address it. And we've got to be able to put the funding there. I have a podcast where I interviewed a young man named Whitfield Bailey who runs the Cornerstone Recovery there in Knoxville. And Webster Bailey, yeah. I'm sorry. That's when that's where you get yourself in trouble, say stuff off the cuff. Just ask our president. And it is an ongoing problem, and we do need to address it. I'm not dodging it because I dealt with that when I was in the state legislature. And the mental health issue, of course, is, I'd always used to say it affects basically about 1 in 5 Tennesseans. If it doesn't affect you or a family member, you know somebody or you know multiple people who are affected by it. And with mental health issues, if there's something going on, you cut your hand, you don't think twice about going to the emergency room, but the stigma attached to that is incredible. And you're right, too, that these young people that are exposed to this because of the drugs and especially the opioid thing, we've seen the horrors. I've seen the news broadcasts where they arrest or they find a man and a wife, they're in suburbia and they're whacked out on some opioid, probably heroin. They're addicted to it, and they're passed out, and their little kids tied in a baby seat in the back seat, and it's just pathetic. And I think it's multifaceted as well. We've got to, education, of course, is part of the thing, and enforcement of these laws. And we've got to stop this fentanyl coming over the border, and it's coming out of China. There again, communist China, they produce it, they put it over our southern border, and these mules run it across. Mules being humans, not the four-legged variety, but the two-legged variety. And we have an administration in the White House that just basically is green-lighted all this because it's just flowing in. The border, I talked to some people were family members were border agents, and just the morale problem they have because they can't enforce the law. They're not allowed to enforce the law. They're being attacked by the White House and others, and they just can't do their job. And then we've got to address it. And until we have some change of heart in the White House, I don't think we're ever going to see it. It's just going to keep getting worse, and more people are going to die, and it's going to affect us more and more. So, thank you, ma'am, for that call.
All right, folks, press 0 on your phone if you'd like to ask a question of Congressman Tim Burchett. Congressman, Diane in Rutledge up in Granger County has a question about the Supreme Court process. Diane, you're on with Congressman Burchett.
Yes. Hello?
Go ahead. Go ahead, ma'am.
I am calling about Biden's that he wants to appoint to the Supreme Court. Now, how could, number one, are the Republicans strong enough to get this gal in a straitjacket and out? I mean, she believes in pornography and all that stuff. I don't understand. Now, Trump, they tried how many times make him a Russian collusionist when the real ones are Biden and his son Hunter, who he's so proud of for whatever reason, is beyond me. So what I need to know, are the Republicans, we know how dirty and evil and make up stories that they do to try to influence the American public. What are the Republicans willing to do to attack them and start coming at them as strong as they come against the Democrats? They need to be put out in any way possible, and I mean.
Did we lose her? I think we lost her. Well, ma'am, I'll try to address that. Of course, I'm in the House, and that's in the Senate, and it'll be voted on there. And due to the makeup, if every Republican votes against Miss Jackson, she'll still get in. I think all they're doing now is just exposing the left. That's sort of what they're trying to do now, and just to explain what the left is all about. And it is kind of ironic, when the Republican was going through, I mean, they dug up people from his high school, and any dispersions cast towards Miss Jackson, of course, they immediately, the media defends and will continue to defend them. So I don't think there's a whole lot we can do. Elections have consequences. And this president has stayed, he ran most of the time until Bernie was catching up on him. He ran as a lifelong moderate. But I believe this is showing his hardcore left-wing tendencies. He's checking a box. He said he needed to get, he agreed that he was going to put I believe he said a woman of color, and that's fine with me if that's the best person for the job. I just keep thinking, I have a saying, put the best player in, coach. And I'm wondering if this is the best player we can put in at this point. I would hope that maybe in the future we would just take people just by their intelligence level and their beliefs and consider them that way instead of this other way, because I think we're really doing ourselves a disservice. So thank you, ma'am.
All right. Just a reminder, if you've got a question, press 0 to ask a question of Congressman Tim Burchett. Congressman, I've got a question about abortion from Stephen. And Stephen, you're on live with Congressman Burchett.
Yes, thanks for taking my call. I'm having to read my question because I get nervous when I speak on the phone. So I'll just go ahead and read my question. Okay.
Don't get nervous and call me Tim, okay?
Okay, Tim. You and the Tennessee Republicans have fought vigorously against COVID mask mandates, saying that it's your body, your decision, your right not to wear masks. Do you support Governor Bill Lee's proposed vigilante abortion bill that will absolutely deny a woman a right to make decisions concerning her own body? And if you do support it, why?
Well, first of all, I believe abortion is an abomination. I think it's a human life. We talk about our rights. What about the rights of the unborn? At what point does that little baby become a life? You know, if you, as horrible as it sounds, if you murder a lady, and then if she's pregnant, you can, in some instances, you can bring that up as a double murder. Now, why is that? Under one portion of law, it's that way, and under portion of law, it's not. I don't know that I've made too many public statements about the mask mandates. I think some of them are pretty ridiculous, but, it's a personal responsibility issue. And, as well, but when another life's involved, to me, that's where you draw the line. That is, in fact, another life. And that life has those constitutional rights that are guaranteed that you and I enjoy. And thank you so much for asking me that question. That was an excellent question.
All right, Congressman, our next question comes from Powell, or
Pal, as we say.
We're going to hear from,
as my boy Richie says, at ball market number 3. He's a Powell graduate.
We got Jane from Powell asking about food supply. Jane?
Hello, Kim.
Hey, Jane.
I'm concerned about the food supply, not only because of what I see in grocery stores and the rising prices, but from what I hear, the wheat and corn is going to be affected dramatically, and there will be hunger in Europe as well as affecting our country. And I believe in preparing for it, and I wonder if anything is being done.
Yes, ma'am. I agree with you 100%. What's behind a lot of it is our supply chain issues. We, as it turns out, we purchase a large amount of fertilizer from overseas, specifically Russia, and I believe it's made with natural gas and other things. You got to ask yourself, why aren't we making it here? We've got, I think I read 500 years of natural gas in the ground, and it just, one thing this COVID should have shown us, we've got to get things back made in America and quit relying on our enemies and sometimes friends for vital resources. And this is another one. And we're going to be in a big hurt. There's a reason that you're seeing a lot of these billionaires across the world that are buying property, and specifically property that has its own water supply, like wells and springs and things like that. And another thing we need to watch out with that is they're basically slaughterhouses. They're heavily regulated by our own government, and they're owned by overseas interests. And so what they've done is they've kept the locals out of that business, and now they control it with some ridiculous regulations that they put in place. And we've got to watch too. The Chinese are buying up farmland. They're buying up land near our military bases. I mean, this is ridiculous. We have got to quit. We've got to get out of bed with these people. And I'll be drawing up some legislation to address some of that again. I do. And I've talked about it in the past, but the Democrats won't even let it be heard in the committee. And that is an unfortunate situation. We've got a real problem there. And thank you so much for bringing that up.
And Congressman Stevens' question, he referenced earlier the vaccine mandates and masks and things like that. Karen actually has a question about that. Karen, you're on line with Congressman Burchett. You got a little background noise as well, so I'm going to mute you once you ask.
Okay, my question. Hello, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My next question is regarding, I know a gentleman asked about the mask mandates, but we still have, I mean, in my mind, the Congress has moved on. You know, COVID's not in the forefront any longer, but we still have people that are under vaccine mandates. And so it's like that's just been dropped. But our first responders, military, and our healthcare workers are still under those mandates or lose your job. And the second thing I wanted to say was about patient rights. Is the Congress going to address patients' rights? Are we going to have people locked out again, people dying, can't have a clergy, can't have an advocate, no one to explain to them what's going on? I mean, to me, that's against their constitutional rights, and civil rights.
Yes, ma'am, I agree with you. I have a close friend of mine who's her husband died, and she couldn't be with him, and it was just traumatic, and it was ridiculous. And there again, it's politicians, I think, are playing with people's emotions, and because we've given them that much power, and they've moved the needle once again, and we're going to be, and the next time something like this rolls around, we'll roll over again, more so, and they'll just keep pushing it. It's more government control. It's more, I have to get permission from Washington for anything you do. And we've, we need to, those decisions need to be made between a doctor and the patient. And that is where it needs to be. And we've, I can't agree with you more. And we've closed, I was reading a quote from, I believe, the mayor of New York when he was talking about how they were going to close synagogues and churches down. And they were going to arrest people in the United States of America that went to their church or synagogue. And to me, that is disgusting. And that's the type of thing that we need to fight against every day. And I'm glad Biden's more or less abandoned a lot of his mandates for the large workplace, but of course it does still apply to healthcare workers. And I saw where the Navy SEALs, if you can imagine that, our best fighting force we have, or special forces, I guess, really all of it, our Green Berets and SEALs and I guess the Marine Raiders, we're all falling under that. And to think that we're not going to allow those men who trained specifically for those things are still under those mandates, to me, is ridiculous. And it's just a power stroke. It's just like in an airport. You're in an airplane. I realize it's a metal tube, but the air is filtered multiple times. And it's just a power move is all it is. And I'm sick of it. And I know most people are. And there again, though, we won't be able to do anything through any legislation because Pelosi won't allow anything that would look like this White House has made a mistake. And they've clearly made some big mistakes. Thank you.
Thanks for that question. A couple of reminders. One, Congressman, we have about 15 minutes before we need to start wrapping up because we've got votes coming up on the House floor very soon. Also, if you're on the call and would like to ask a question, please press 0. You'll be able to drop into the queue, record your question, and be brought on live with Congressman Burchett. Certainly won't be able to get to every question, but we'll do our best. Congressman, we've got a lot of calls today out of Claiborne County. This one is from Don. He has a question about guns and bringing them into the country. Don, you're on with Congressman Burchett.
Oh, thank you, Tim. The question I have, and I'll make a statement before, in the 90s, Bill Clinton closed a lot of the bases down around the country. And one of those bases was the naval base in Long Beach, California. At that time, I was working law enforcement, and I got attached to the customs agents on Terminal Island. And one of the tours that I took there on the dock, I was introduced to by one of the agents was 3 huge crates that had been lifted off of a ship by crane. And when they opened them up, they were marked machine parts from China. And when they opened them up and started putting these parts together, they made AK-47s. This was 1972. Now, the Chinese took over operational control of that closed naval base right next to Terminal Island in about 1996, according to newspaper reports at that time. So I'm wondering if Congress and the Senate are even aware of what an entrance to the United States they gave China through smuggling efforts.
Yes, sir. I'd say very few people in our country are aware of China's espionage. I had breakfast a couple months ago, I guess it was, with former Secretary of State Pompeo, and he said that, they've even found Chinese infiltration or influences down to the level of PTA meetings in California, and they've probably approached or tried to approach numerous Congress people. We had one congressman up here who was on our intelligence committee that was literally sleeping with a Chinese spy. Dianne Feinstein's driver was a Chinese spy. I mean, this is confirmed. This is not some conspiracy theorist, tinfoil hat wearing thing. It's not, Burchett, he just picked something up at Ball Market or something. No, this is the real deal, and we've got to address it. The Chinese are not our friends. And, anytime you say anything about the Chinese communists or the country of China, everybody, they call you a racist. Well, that's what the media wants you to do. I mean, that's the way they do it. And then they used to do it. They have these things called these Confucius Institutes that operate at our public. They operated in Tennessee, and all they are is a communist plant to get in and get information to win people over, to get spies. They told us when we got up here, they know how many paper clips we order in the Longworth building. I mean, they know everything, and they formulate it. And that's what they're doing right now with our pitiful situation in Ukraine. They're watching everything. They're watching the supply chain. They're watching how NATO operates, how everybody operates, and who's loyal to who. And then when they move on Taiwan, which I'm pretty convinced they will, they'll know how to operate. And we got to quit. We got to quit. I was talking to a constituent today about how the defense bill is just riddled with stuff that allows the Chinese to buy. We have vital things, not something minor, but vital things. Most of our ball bearings, they're bought in China. You just go down the list. And we used to manufacture that in this country. And these gutless politicians up here need to get, now when I say get out of bed, it's literally get out of bed with these communists. So it's a big problem, and we're hopefully in this. We've talked about it in our own Republican conference, and hopefully the Democrats will agree with us at some point. But I don't know at this point. But thank you. And I was going to say, if you're down there in Tazewell and you're looking for some guns, I visited my buddy Miss Jones over there at Mike's Gun Shop. If you're ever over there, you tell her I told you to come by.
All right. Thanks a lot, Don. Congressman, we've had a few calls, some from Campbell County, some from Claiborne County, some from Knox County, that are just asking questions about election integrity, election fairness, and some questions about the upcoming election. So we're just going to kind of consolidate those into one question from Sue, and then feel free, obviously, to add any other comments you would like. Sue, you're on with Congressman Burchett.
Hey, Tim, it's Sue Boyer. I know we're in a mess. There's no question about that. Every time someone's asked a question, you've answered appropriately. Basically, your hands are tied. There's not enough Republicans to overpower the Democrats. And it really isn't going to change until that changes. I know how we feel around here, around Hogskin and Iduma where I live, but
yes,
what's your feeling as you talk to people across the United States do people see through what's happening, or are we ready to go to work to make a difference come the next election?
Yes, ma'am. I think people are fed up, and I've said we better do something. We better not just have a bunch of bogus things going on, and we better produce, Sue. And you're exactly right. If we don't produce, we're going to lose our country. And I don't care what party you're in, but we've just got to start addressing these issues. Supply chain. We cannot be dependent on foreign entities, especially the communists, China or Russia. And we've got to get them out of powerful positions in our country. We've got to start taking things back that we once dominated the world in, and we've just given it away. And I think COVID has proven that so much with China, and I can't say enough. That and debt are our biggest enemies right now, Sue.
Well, Tim, does it seem to you that there are people that are more loyal to a party than they are to a concept of evil?
I think so. And they don't, they're not going to vote for anything Trump has because they don't like Trump. They're not going to vote for anything Biden has because they don't like Biden. And I've found that you just got to find some common ground, like we did in the legislature with your dear husband Jim, who is my dear friend, in the state house, when we could find some common ground. And that's what we did in Tennessee, and that's why Tennessee is a zero debt state, and people are trying to get in here as fast as they can from all over the country. And you're exactly right, Sue. And I know you miss Jim, and he was a dear friend of mine. I enjoyed every minute with him in the legislature. He was a mentor to me, as he was to a lot of us young guys coming in. And actually, Sue is a career educator. Wow. So I hadn't talked to her in years. Thank you, Sue.
All right, folks, we've just got about 10 more minutes. If you'd like to try to fit in a question as we wrap up, press 0 on your phones to record a question. It'll be brought on live after that with the Congressman. Congressman, we've just had so many calls about the elections. I think maybe we take one more before we move on to another subject. Carol, you are on. Carol's from Knox County. Congressman, Carol?
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. How are you doing?
Hey, Carol. How are you, ma'am?
Fine, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Congressman, like Ms. Boyer you were just talking to, I would like to know if there are any new guidelines that are going to be put in motion in order to ensure a legal count of votes, because I'm afraid since they did this, it's not an if situation, they did it in the presidential election, then they can steal the election come November. And I'd just like to know if the Republicans are going to be one step ahead of the crooked Democrats, because the Democrats are responsible, of course, for Biden being in there. And I'm sorry, I cannot bring myself to call him president. I respect the office. I don't respect the man, because considering everything that has gone on since he's been in there, and he should have been impeached, but we know what the line of succession, where that would lead. That's the only reason he's staying in there. But I'd just like to know if the Republicans are going to be one jump ahead of the Democrats in making sure this is going to be a legal election.
Well, let me tell you what they passed already in the House. Now it's dead in the Senate, we hope, as long as Manchin and Sinema stay healthy. I think we're going to be okay. But they number their bills usually in importance. They hold up the first 10 bills historically, and that's the most important pieces of legislation. And this was H.R. 1. It was called For the People Act, and it was really just a incredibly unconstitutional power grab. It basically took all the power away from. See, we don't have problems, those kind of problems in Tennessee. I haven't seen them. I mean, we've had glitches, but nothing like they've seen in some of these other states. And it basically allows the power to take away state election laws. It eliminated voter ID requirements. You just walk in and vote. And it allows the same day voter registration where you can't verify who somebody is. And felons that were currently in prison can vote under this. It gives basically the D.C. bureaucrats redistricting power. And I don't want these people up here I like states' rights, going back to the states. It legalizes ballot harvesting. And what ballot harvesting is, ma'am, is when people go to election day, it's over, supposed to be. Well, they give them 2 weeks or so, and if you haven't voted, they can go find you, and basically they'll they go through the list, because it's public record, and it should be, who votes and who doesn't, and what primaries you vote in. And they say, oh, well, you voted Republican or you voted Democrat, and we need more votes. And they go find you and fill out a form and submit that as your vote. And of course, did you really sign the form or did you not? That's the question. And it's complete. That is just garbage. And it would use taxpayer money to fund campaigns like Nancy Pelosi's. I mean, ma'am, she doesn't need any more money. She doesn't need any more money. And if the 2020 election, as they keep telling us, was the least corrupt election in the presidential election in the history of this country, then why are the Democrats pushing nearly an 800-page bill to correct it? We've had the Mariette Miller Meeks, a Republican lady. She was the Democrat who lost to her was trying to overturn the outcome of the election in the House, and it was clearly just a double standard, and they allowed it to come through, and then they eventually kicked it out. But it's a horrible situation, and the national media does not cover it. You're called a racist or whatever. They try to label you as something that you're not if don't support this big government liberal agenda, and it's very unfortunate. And yes, ma'am, we are very much aware of what's going on. Thank you for that call.
All right, Congressman. Actually, real quick, one last opportunity to get your questions in. Press 0 to record a question, then come on live with the Congressman. Congressman, we have Paris from Powell has a question about what's going on over in Ukraine. Paris?
Yes. My question is, do you think Russia will continue its behavior and go to annexing or going after other sovereign countries to extend its power? Thank you.
Yes, sir, I do. They're talking about some line they've drawn. They think that they're going to try to negotiate that. Well, he doesn't have a right to that. But if they do give him that, which I don't think the Ukrainian president, I heard Zelensky say, I think earlier this morning that he was up at 4, so they've all the days run together. But I believe he said that they would not accept that, which I agree with him. And we've got a lot of pitfalls in that. One is our president. He keeps misspeaking over what we should do over there. Should we take out Putin? Should we not? He's getting involved in things, and all he's doing is feeding the propaganda machine of Russia. And then it looks like it further pushes his agenda. We talked about the no-fly zone. I don't support America involvement in a no-fly zone, because what that's going to do is put American boys and girls in airplanes over Ukraine, going to knock down Russian planes. So we are in direct conflict with Russia. And then what happens if which they have, the surface-to-air missiles that they will shoot out of Russia into Ukraine on the borders in those areas and try to knock down our airplanes, and then we have to knock out those batteries. We'd have to. They're shooting our American planes down. Then we're in effect firing into Russia, and that is war. And that's just, this all it was. Every 100% of this was avoidable if we had just stayed on exporting energy. And that's why I sponsored some legislation on confiscating these corrupt criminals. It's called the Confiscating Corrupt Criminals Proceed Act. And it basically just uses the assets seized through Russian sanctions to pay for humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Putin's responsible for the human suffering in Ukraine, and these oligarchs, you see them in their $1 billion riding around and, oh, we can't survive. They've been profiting off of Putin's regime, and they're basically just fronts for him. He's just like a mobster, no different, no less. Gives them money, they go out, and he gets a cut off of whatever they do. And that's why Elon Musk said he is the richest man in the world. And Americans are, we're stuck with these high gas prices, and we shouldn't be footing the bill for all this. And that's the way it appears to me. Thank you for that call.
All right, and I think this probably will be our last question, Congressman, and then we'll give you a chance to offer some closing remarks. This question has actually been holding for quite a while. This is Mary Ann from Knoxville. Mary Ann, you are on with Congressman Burchett.
Thank you for taking my call. My concern, which is certainly personal to me since I've witnessed this, my son was injured at work and has been railroaded by the workers' comp. The laws, I think, here in Tennessee need to be evaluated, and I know several years back, I think it was the governor before Lee that changed Haslam changed some laws around, but he's been taken advantage of, and I've witnessed this. It's been ongoing for like 4 years now. There's still no resolution. He's he's still injured, and he can't get any justice. And like I said, this is personal to me, but I just wanted you to be aware that if it's happened to him, it's probably happened to other people as well, and
yes,
needs to be addressed.
Yeah, it's personal to me too, ma'am, if it's personal to you, and I appreciate that. If you could, give my office a call tomorrow, 865-523-3772, and tell them it's a workers' comp issue, and we'll start working on it. It's probably some state issue. Since you mentioned the governor's race, governor, I suspect it's a state legislation, but I spent 16 years in the legislature, and we'll try to help you get something resolved in that. And I know that because that's just the system. There goes the buzzer. I'm getting called to vote, but the system is not. It's always seemed to be stacked against folks like us, and we will help you, ma'am. We will try to help you, and I'm sorry your son's had this injury because I know how devastating that can be. And thank you for being a good mama.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and appreciate you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, folks. Well, thank y'all so much for joining me on our telephone town hall. I hope it was informative and helpful to you and your families. I always tell folks I don't take myself that serious, but every night I walk out and look at the dome over that Capitol, and I think, wow, Charlie and Joyce Burchett's baby boy is a United States Congressman. I take that very serious, and I hear your problems, and I want to help. So please give us a call, 865-523-3772, and we'll try to assist